Hello, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and of course, as usual, in voice chat on our Discord, which you can find in our link tree. How is everybody? I hope everyone is doing well and you're all enjoying the week so far. Yes, it is Tuesday. Tuesday is Tuesday. But today we are starting chapter 7. So, in the last chapter, basically, we ended with a little bit, a little excerpt from Arundhati Roy's book, The God of Small Things. And I find it really interesting that we have we've gone into so much about Western imperialism and its impact on India, and how India has been in such a constant state of flux, but not just a constant state of flux in terms of the political landscape, but in terms of society. But India has been one of those places where nonviolent uprisings have been kind of their thing, kind of in response to the extreme violence that has been imposed on the people of India by the dominant ideology, by anti-Muslim rhetoric, by anti-communist rhetoric, by the kind of rhetoric that sees Indian society become an agent of white supremacy and an agent of empire. So now we get to chapter 7, and we're talking about Brave New India, uprisings. So this interview was conducted in New Delhi, the capital of India, on the 29th of December 2007. So now we're getting to 20 years ago. No, 19 years ago. So he asks, all nations have had ideas about themselves that are repeated without much scrutiny or examination. The United States, a beacon of freedom and liberty. India, the world's largest democracy, and dedicated to secularism. Now, secularism is not something that we see mentioned with a place like India, because people think that it is a Hindu country, but it actually is supposed to be a secular country with very much the separation of church and state. And so, yeah, we have this kind of India that has that has kind of cemented itself as a Hindu country. And that is what the current government is fighting towards, a Hindu nationalist state. And obviously, we know that any ethnocentrism is absolutely diabolical, and we should be fighting against it. That is why India's government is so aligned with Israel. So Arundhati Roy responds, India has done a better job than the United States in recent years. The myth about the US being a beacon of liberty has been more or less discredited among people who are even vaguely informed. India, on the other hand, has managed to pull off almost a miraculous public relations coup. It has managed to pull off it really is the flavor of the decade. It's the sort of dream destination for world capital. All this is done in the name of, quote, India is not Pakistan, unquote. India is not Pakistan. India is not Afghanistan, quote unquote. India is a secular democracy, and so on and so forth. India has among the highest number of custodial deaths in the world. And something that is hardly ever mentioned is that those custodial deaths that happen in India are generally either Muslims or people who are Dalit, people who are the lowest caste. Dalit, or Adivasi. It's a country where perhaps 1/4 of its territory is out of control of the government. But where the light is shone is where the Sensex stock market is jumping and investments are coming in. And where the lights are switched off are the states where farmers are committing suicide. Kashmir, where tens of thousands have been killed. Chhattisgarh, where parts of Andhra Pradesh, where there's parts of Andhra Pradesh, and where there are killings going on. The media's attention is on a festival in Tamil Nadu or a cricket match between India and Australia in Adelaide. We are at the cusp where the definition of terrorism is being expanded. Under the Bharatiya Janata Party, the radical Hindu government previously in power, which is in power now, much of the emphasis was on Islamic terrorism. But now Islamic terrorism is not enough to net the people the government wants. Now, with massive displacement from huge development projects and special economic zones, the people protesting, those who have been so-called terrorists too, they can't be Islamic terrorists, so now they have to be the Maoists. The militancy in Kashmir and the expansion of the Maoist cadres are both realities, but ones that both sides benefit from exaggerating. When Prime Minister Manmohan Singh says Maoism is the greatest internal security threat, it allows various state governments to pass all kinds of laws that could name anybody a terrorist. If they came to my house tomorrow, just the books I have would make me qualify as a terrorist. In Chhattisgarh, if I had these books and I weren't Arundhati Roy, I could be put into jail. A very well-known doctor, Binayak Sen, has just been arrested on charges of being a Maoist. He's being made an example of to discourage people from having any association with people resisting this absolutely lawless takeover of land. Thousands and thousands of acres are being handed over to corporates. So we're sort of on a cusp of expanding the definition of terrorists so that people who disagree with this mode of development can be imprisoned, and are being imprisoned. And as I always say, imprisonment is just the first step in disappearing people. Making people disappear under the guise of safety. Until recently, even after the 1990s, when the neoliberal model was being imported into India, we were still talking about the privatization of water and electricity and the devastation of rivers. But when you look at privatization of water and electricity, companies had to find their markets here, even if it was for the Indian elite, while making water and electricity too expensive for everyone else. But with the opening up of the mineral sector and the discovery of huge deposits of bauxite and iron ore in Odisha and Chandigarh, for example, we are watching these places change. Now you don't have to find a local market. You just take the whole mountain of bauxite, store it in a desert in Australia, and trade on the futures market. So the corporates are here, and their guns are trained on these minerals. If you look at a map of India, you will see that there are forests, Adivasis, tribal people, and under the forests are minerals. So the most ecologically and socially vulnerable parts of India that are now in the crosshairs. The Tatas, who just a few years ago were trying to be the sort of good uncle corporation, have now decided to aggressively enter the world market, signing a memorandum of understanding with the Chhattisgarh government for the mining of iron ore. And within days, not by coincidence, we saw the announcement of what is known as the Salwa Judam, the People's Militia, which purportedly is a spontaneous movement that sprang up to fight the menace of the Maoists. SJ is armed by the government. Something like 400 villages have been evacuated and moved into police camps. Chhattisgarh is a situation of civil war, where this is exactly what happened in Colombia. And while our eyes are on the supposed civil war, obviously the mining, minerals, everything can just be taken away. It is, as I always say, a weapon of mass distraction. In order to attack to be safe from a threat, you have to create the threat. Odisha has bauxite mountains, which are beautiful and densely forested with flat tops like airfields. They are porous mountains which store water for the fields of the plains, and the whole mountain have just been taken away by private corporations, destroying forests, displacing the tribal people and devastating the land. It's hard to know what to say or how to think about it anymore. We are all well versed in Noam Chomsky's thesis of the manufacture of consent, but here we're living in the era of the manufacture of dissent. For example, the way the bauxite business works is that corporates pay the Odisha government, one second, a tiny royalty, and they are making billions. You going up? Okay, good night. Love you, sweet dreams. You're handsome. And with those billions, they mop up all the intellectuals and environmentalists. Do you think EIAs are being done in these areas? Absolutely the fuck not. Alcan has given $1 million environmental award to one of the most leading environmental activists in India. There's Vedanta University in Odisha. The Tatars have the Jameshji, and the Dorabji Tata trusts, which they use to fund activists, to stage cultural events, and so on. So these people are funding the dissent as well as the devastation. Dissent is now on a leash. Oof. It's a manufactured situation in which everyone is playing out a kind of theater. And when you have dissent that is staged, they can easily squash it through staged means. So he asks, clearly the state must be enabling these kinds of situations to continue. And that's exactly it. Why do they want reason to invade Iran? Because they want to manufacture the American people being on their side. So they make up reasons, and then they create the problem, and then they fix the problem. They start a fire, and then when they put out the fire, they want us to be grateful for it. Clearly, the state must be enabling these kinds of situations to continue, so she answers. This is the genius of the Indian state. It's an extremely sophisticated state, has a lot to teach the Americans about occupation. It has a lot to teach the world about how you manage dissent. You just wear people down and wait things out. When they want to mow people down, when they want to kill and imprison, they do that too. Who doesn't believe that India is a spiritual country where everybody thinks that if it's not okay in this life, it will be okay in the next one? This is one of the most devastatingly cruel societies. Which other culture could dream up the caste system? Even the Taliban can't come up with the way Indian civilization has created Dalits. Explain who the Dalits are. The so-called untouchables of India. They're on the bottom of the economic social ladder. They're on the bottom of everything. They are routinely bludgeoned, butchered, killed. I don't know whether it made it to the American press, but for example, Dalits, because they have been the bottom of Hindu society, often have converted and become Muslims, Christians, or Sikh. But they continue to be treated as untouchables even in those religions. It's so pervasive. And she talks about this in The God of Small Things. In fact, I would like for you to read. I would like to read that passage for you. And while I'm searching for it, I will tell you the story. I did speech and drama in high school. Well, that's what the subject was called, speech and drama. And in speech and drama, for your senior year, you have to perform a monologue as part of it, you know. You have to choose something from from a book or from a play, and you have to perform it as a monologue. Oh, come on. I cannot find it. Why can I not find this in the PDF? Yeah, so I had to do a monologue either from a book or from a play, and I chose this from The God of Small Things, which we read last week. As a young boy, Veluda would come with Velia Papan to the back entrance of the Ayemanem house to deliver the coconuts they had plucked from the trees in the compound. Papaji would not allow Paravans into the house. Nobody would. They were not allowed to touch anything that touchables touched. Caste Hindus, caste Christians. Mamachi told Esther and Rael that she could remember a time in her girlhood when Paravans were expected to crawl backwards with a broom, sweeping away their footprints so that Brahmins or Syrian Christians would not defile themselves by accidentally stepping into a Paravan's footprint. In Mamachi's time, Paravans, like other untouchables, were not allowed to walk on public roads, not allowed to cover their upper bodies, not allowed to carry umbrellas. They had to put their hands over their mouths when they spoke to divert their polluted breath away from those whom they addressed. When the British came to Malabar, a number of Paravans, Pelyas and Pulyas, among them Veluda's grandfather, Kellan, converted to Christianity and joined the Anglican Church to escape the scourge of untouchability. As added incentive, they were given a little food and money. They were known as the Rice Christians. It didn't take them long to realize that they had jumped from the frying pan into the fire. They were made to have separate churches with separate services and separate priests. As a special favor, they were given their own separate pariah bishop. After independence, they found that they were not entitled to any government benefits like job reservations or bank loans at low interest rates because officially, on paper, they were Christians and therefore casteless. It was like having to sweep away your footprints without a broom. Or worse, not being allowed to leave footprints at all. Yes, the caste system is awful. Hi, Chef. So these are Dalits as well. And when they convert to other religions, it's even worse. There was recently a man called Ban Singh who is a Sikh Dalit. Even in India, people would jump at the idea of there being such a thing as a Sikh Dalit. But actually 30% of Sikhs are Dalits and about 90% of them are landless. So obviously they work as labor on other people's farms. The women are vulnerable. Upper castes all over India think that they have the right to pick up a Dalit woman and rape her. Ban Singh's young daughter was raped by the upper caste people in his village. He was a member of the Communist Party, Marxist-Leninist, known as the Naxalites, and he filed a case in court. They warned him, said, "If you don't drop the case, we will kill you." He didn't, so they caught him and cut off his arms and legs. He was in a hospital in Delhi. I went to see him there. It was a huge lesson about how being a political person saved him. He said, Do you think I don't have arms and legs? I do, because all of my comrades have arms and legs. He's a singer. He sang a song about a young girl's father getting her dowry ready for her just before her marriage and her trousseau. And she says to him, I don't want the sari and jewels. What will I do with them? Give me a gun. Unfortunately, I think because of what happened with the Narmada movement, the fact that people fought for 15 years using non-violent methods and were just flicked aside, you hear more and more people saying, I don't want bangles, I don't want Gandhi, just give me a gun. I wrote a story. It's on the Daily Beast, on the investigation of 2 rape cases in India. One of them, a Maharaj. No, not Maharaj, Singh. And another Dalit. So it's called A Tale of Two Castes, Two Crimes and Two Justice Systems. One was the Hathras case in India. A Dalit woman brutally raped and killed in Hathras. And in contrast, in very strong contrast, the response to the case of Jyoti Singh, also called Nirbhaya, a woman who was a Singh, upper caste, who was raped and killed on a bus, and the police responses to both those cases. The reason that I was banned from entering India, was because of not just this story, but another story that I wrote that appeared in print, basically talking about how India is reviving the caste system in a legal sense through policing, and especially gender-based violence and policing. Why do you think I'm so against the carceral state? So the next question. You once described Narmada Bachao Andolan as the greatest nonviolent movement since independence. I did. But I think people, including myself, are disillusioned by what happened. And I personally feel what we really need to do is a sort of post-mortem. The state did what's in its nature, and it has won that battle. The Supreme Court in 2001 was a devastating blow, but in my opinion, that should have been the time when people began to question institutions. Instead, people have gone on and on by trying to find some embers of hope in courts and have not broken the faith. I have. I don't look to the court for any kind of real help, which is not to say that every single court judgment that comes out is terrible, but there's a systemic problem with the Supreme Court of India, its views, its ideologies. It is a huge subject, separate, and one of the most important things that needs to be discussed. But the Narmada movement now refuses to question itself. I think that's a problem. It was a wonderful and magnificent effort, but it wasn't faultless. Unless we try and think through what happened and what went wrong, we can't move on. In fact, as I said, many people have felt that there's futility in these kinds of fasts and dharnas and sit-ins and sitting on the pavement singing songs. In fact, to some extent, the government loves it. Now Sonia Gandhi is talking about satyagraha. Satyagraha literally means peaceful resistance. We have satyagraha fairs in Connaught Place where they sell herbal shampoos. When the government starts promoting satyagraha, it's time to think about it. They want us to follow their rules. They want us to protest and complain in the ways that they control. because they control it. They control the quote-unquote proper avenues, and that is why they want us to follow the proper avenues. It's time to question radically many things, including what is this joyful freedom movement of 1947, who it benefited, and if it really was a middle-class revolution that, as usual, fired its guns off at the shoulders of the poor, which I think it was. The Indian elites stepped very easily into the shoes of our white sahibs. Sahib is kind of a way of saying massa. Oh, the next question. Talk about Narendra Modi and Gujarat. In December 2007, he and his party are re-elected. It was Modi in 2002 who presided over a pogrom resulting in the death of 2,000 people, primarily Muslims, in Gujarat. What accounts for his ability to be re-elected despite this record of promoting communal violence? She says, no, it's not despite, it's because. Muslims were massacred on the streets, women were gang raped, 150,000 Muslims were driven from their homes and now live in ghetto conditions, economically and socially ostracized in Gujarat. This was all an election campaign. So I think we really need to question structurally, what is this democracy? It's pointless to demonize Modi because there are going to be people like him who understand that there's just an organic link between democracy and majoritarianism, and between majoritarianism and fascism. And as I keep saying, there is fire in the ducts. What is a politician spawned by this complex society going to do? He's going to try and forge a majority for himself using the lowest common denominator, which will then be a sort of fateful vote bank. And that is exactly what Trump did. It's what Modi did. Modi is a brilliant politician, and he has the corporates eating out of his hand. So the connection between fascists and the big corporations, what we saw in Nazi Germany, is once again at play. Tata, Reliance, all of these people say Gujarat is the dream destination for capital. Okay. I'm glad you're safe, my love. Having a fascist dictator is one thing, but having a fascist democratically elected power is another. Because we now have millions of little Modis running around in Gujarat. Recently, just before the elections, Tehelka news magazine did a sting operation on a major primetime channel, people speaking openly about how they had raped and pulped Muslim women and hacked people to death, and then Modi had given them refuge or sent them out of Gujarat to protect them. This was all well documented. These guys say it themselves. All the documentation exists in great detail from human rights groups such as the People's Union for Democratic Rights and Communalism Combat. But when the evidence was aired on television, everybody's reaction was, what a terrible thing. Now Modi is going to win the election. Because these people are boasting about this kind of massacre. It's going to win him votes. So that's what I meant by saying it's not despite, it's because of. Okay?
Yeah, I was just looking for my phone.
Okay.
Love you.
Love you. Good night.
Good night.
Having said that, it's important to note that Modi, in many constituencies, just won by 300, 500, or some 1,000 votes. It was close. Still, if you look at how democracy has begun to function in India, I find it chilling. Consider what happened to a member of the Legislative Assembly, Ehsan Jafari, a poet who lived in the Ahmedabad housing society called Gulbarga. When the mobs began to gather outside during the Gujarat massacre, a group of Muslims sought protection from Jafari, thinking he's an MLA and he's going to get killed. A mob of some 20,000 people gathered and started baying for his blood. This man made more than 100 phone calls that day, from Modi to the Home Minister Advani, to the police, to Sonia Gandhi, saying, please help. The police even came to his home and went away. Ehsan Jafari was pulled out of his house and in front of everyone in broad daylight was hacked to pieces. Something like 12 women were gang raped and killed and others burnt alive. And the policeman who was there was promoted. The man who was organizing this now became the police commissioner of Gujarat. The lawyers who were representing the Muslims had been the lawyers for the accused. Some of the survivors knew who the killers were. Police refused to write their names in the first information reports, stating that it was just general mob violence. The Supreme Court made some virtuous sounds at the time, saying Modi was a modern-day Nero, fiddling while Gujarat burned. And they just clammed up. Nothing happened. And then you have these men come out and boast on primetime TV of having raped and killed and looted, saying things like, "We know that these Muslims are terrified of being burned. They would need to be buried, and that's why we decided to burn them." And nothing happened. So everything just goes on. Every single institution has been penetrated by these people and functions. As long as you are open for investments, as long as the Tatas and Reliance and all the rich people are happy, we're looking at something that no dictator could do. This level of penetration in these various institutions drives you completely crazy. You sit there and you just don't know what to think. And even the political parties, like, say, the Communist Party of India, that oppose Modi, and then goes and does a Nandigram. Nandigram is in West Bengal, a state that is ruled by the Communist Party. You went to Nandigram. Can you explain what happened? It is a district that consists of many, many villages. The Marxist Communist Party of India, which is a coalition of the centre right now, have been in power in West Bengal for 30 years, unchallenged. I grew up in Kerala, which has also had a communist government, but it's been in and out of power. When I went to Bengal, I realized the first question one has to ask is, how in this tumultuous place can a party remain in power for 30 years unchallenged? There's something terribly wrong here. It's difficult, but I'll try to explain it simply because this has led to a lot of confusion, except in Bengal and to some extent in Kerala. The communists don't have any cadres elsewhere in India, so it was consciously trying to associate itself with various people's movement that have existed in India for many years, as well as the World Social Forum in India. The forum was held in Mumbai in 2005, but very many people who were associated with the CPI, the Marxist Party, were involved in the forums that were held in Porto Alegre in Brazil. And then a year and a half or 2 years ago, the Indian government announced this whole policy of the Special Economic Zone, and says an acronym that has spawned many sarcastic variants like Slavery Enabled Zone. These are huge economic enclaves. India used to be a feudal society with huge feudal zamindars. Zamindar is... How do I explain zamindar? It's 2319! Anybody who likes Monsters, Inc., it's 2319! Zamindar is kind of like a hereditary landowner or kind of like an aristocrat. But it's kind of used derogatorily now. Oh, you're a zamindar. It means like you didn't work for your money. Big landowners. And then there's the failed process of land reform in various states. The state where the most successful land reforms happened, oddly enough, was Kashmir. Kashmiris are still enjoying the benefits, but there were some land reforms in places like Bengal and elsewhere. But now this whole business of these special economic zones is essentially reversing the process by taking away land to give it to corporations. The Communist Party of India went from vociferously opposing these zones to suddenly turning around to create one of the biggest in West Bengal, which is to be a chemical hub in the district of Nandigram, right near the Halida airport. And an Indonesian corporation called the Salim Group was a sort of front. Trouble started in West Bengal, first with Tata in a place called Singur, where the government gave the Tatars something close to 1,000 hectares of land to make small cars. You can imagine the communist government wanting to make small cars the people's car. You know who else made the people's car? That was Volkswagen. So there was huge resistance. There was open fire. People were killed in Singur. But then notices went around for the land acquisition for this chemical hub in Nandigram. Something like 18,000 hectares. Thousands and thousands of people were going to be affected. And Nandigram just rose up in revolt. It was interesting because it used to be a Communist Party of India stronghold. I think this was a case of the party being so unused to any kind of opposition that it misread the situation and thought it could do exactly what it wanted. It resulted in basically the party having what the people in Nandigram called Kader police, which is party people dressed in police uniforms going in and committing acts of violence and even murder. The first uprising was in March. It's a whole mess with all kinds of politics, but fantastic resistance. People dug up the roads, refused the police entry and said, "You can't come in and you can't have our land." I'll just tell you what happened when I was there. The government keeps saying that because these people barricaded Nandigram, they're not allowing us to do development work. We can't give polio drops. There's not a single health center in these villages. The nearest hospital is in Nandigram town, which is far for people to go. All these years, people lacked electricity, and suddenly you're talking about polio drops. This is really about regaining complete control. The second time I went, which was just last week, the people I met the first time sent messages saying, "Please don't come to us. Please don't acknowledge us because we'll just be eliminated. Anyone who pops their head up, it's off with their heads." Just a few days ago, I was present at the exhumation of a body in a field, a man whose legs were smashed and who had 2 bullets in his back. His wife identified him. The neighbor said to me that the man was a member of the Bhumi Uched Patirod Committee, which is the resistance organization, and had been told several times that he must join the Communist Party of India, otherwise he would be killed, and when he didn't, they made an example of him. The government keeps saying, "Oh, it was the Maoists. It was the local people, outsiders. How dare Communist Party say this is the work of outsiders?" What do they mean by outsiders? Beyond the district or outside Bengal? If they believe in this kind of rhetoric, what gives them the right to comment about Gujarat or fascism or the BJP? I salute the resistance in Nandigram. I think it's important for anyone else in India that they force government to say that they will not build the hub. Any questions so far? Have you gotten something to eat, by the way, love? Okay, now she's getting into Kashmir. So I think I'm going to stop here. There's a lot to process here. Okay, I'm glad. Well done, taking care of yourself. I'm proud of you. Any questions? So that was very dense. And a lot of what this dense information gives us is a sense of we have these post-colonial societies or this neo-colonial societies which are so colonized in thought that they colonize themselves. It was Steve Biko who said, "The most potent weapon in the hand of the in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And Indian society, there is so much wrong with Indian society. There's so much wrong with not just India, but when people look at me and they see all of those stereotypes, what I would like to tell them is, look at the number of educated people in India. Look at the number of educated people in the Indian diaspora, like my own. Look at what we have done despite colonialism. And then when you start seeing people who look like me as human, and you start joining our fight for liberation, then look critically at the people who look like me and what they have done because of it. India is not much different from the US, not much different from Israel. And that is why I will never be allowed to visit the motherland. Please remember that I do these readings for free. I'm in a spot of bother right now with the taxman. So, yeah. Yes, I'm in a spot of bother with the taxman. Yeah, thank you, Nemo. Yeah. I have not been able to save up enough to pay the taxman because, yeah, fuck you, Nemo. So yeah, I need a little bit of help. That is why the goal is quite big. So please do remember I do the readings for free and do the whole community thing. So if you can support, please do. And I know Justin is here every single reading. Thank you so much, my love. I'm going to say goodbye to Twitch and YouTube, and I shall catch y'all tomorrow. Oh, I had the wrong thing up the entire time. I was supposed to have this thing. I'm a silly goose. But yeah, I shall see y'all tomorrow.